Today's topic is how self-medicating cannabis can be a key tool for women's health with Rachael Speegle.
Welcome to the Well Woman Show, where we interview women executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And you're listening to the Well Woman Show,
where motivated women achieve fulfillment and well-being.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
Take time for myself by coming to things like Well Woman Drinks.
To be accepting of myself no matter what. Step away from judgment as much as possible.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show.
You're going to be in for a good ride. I don't regret anything. Everything I've ever done, I've learned from it, one way or another, good or bad.
Being a little bit selfish for yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first and then give what's left.
I'm a woman. I would prefer to tell my own story. My story, though it's very personal, is universal.
You're listening to the Well Woman Show. And now your host, Giovanna Rossi.
Hi, Giovanna Rossi here, and welcome to another episode of the Well Woman Show, where I interview women leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs about their lives and their road to becoming and being who they are today. Are you feeling burned out or finding it hard to focus on your goals? Or are you in transition? Well, you're not alone. We all need to activate our superpowers. These are the internal strengths and abilities we all already have but don't use all the time. Superpowers can be cultivated, and they include empathy, love, intuition, courage, and more. As always, this episode is brought to you by Well Woman Life, a global community of women living our best lives. Whether it's your health, relationships, your money, or making an impact in your community and the world, Well Woman Life has you covered. You've made a commitment to not settle, to use your voice, and to live your best life. Well Woman Life offers annual memberships, workshops, and retreats to support you. Check out wellwomanlife.com/Facebook to join our growing community. Now back to the show. This week's episode is brought to you by the Well Woman Superpower Retreat. Join us October 26th and 27th at Sunrise Springs in Santa Fe, New Mexico. If you're feeling at all burnt out or in transition or just needing to rejuvenate and be around supported by a group of powerful, supportive women, then the Superpower Retreat might be for you. Seats are filling up, so do go to wellwomanlife.com/retreat to check it out. Today's topic is how self-medicating cannabis can be a key tool for women's health. And hopefully by the end of the show, you'll be ready to make a decision about whether it could be good for you, how to talk to your doctor about it, and how the cannabis industry is a growing entrepreneurial industry. My guest today is Rachael Speegle, a registered nurse and director of operations at the Verdes Foundation, a family-owned medical cannabis dispensary licensed in 2010. In this episode, Rachael and I talk about why women have the most to gain from medical cannabis, how self-medicating cannabis can be a key tool for women's health, and how Rachael provides a safe access point to medical cannabis for women. The free giveaway today is a handout called Talking to Your Doctor About Medical Cannabis, and you can get it at wellwomanlife.com/084show. I really like this giveaway because it tells you exactly what to do first before you go to the doctor, and it helps you think through whether cannabis is a good addition to your health regimen. Before we begin, I want to let you know that if you're a leader in your field at the top of your game, but you're burnt out personally or professionally, Well Woman Life has your back. We have memberships, and we also have our Superpower Retreat. So definitely go to wellwomanlife.com/membership, or you can check out the retreat page as well at wellwomanlife.com/retreat. And we hope to have you join our growing community. You can also join the conversation in the Well Woman Life community group at wellwomanlife.com/Facebook. Now to my interview with Rachael Speegle. Welcome to the program, Rachael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
So, Rachael, I want to get started with jumping right into what it is you are up to and how does it impact women's lives and well-being?
So what am I up to? We have a medical cannabis production license in the state of New Mexico. We're licensed under the Department of Health, and we were licensed in 2010. We process So we grow, process, and distribute medical cannabis to the New Mexico community. And we focus primarily on Albuquerque because we're limited in our plant count. And so we can't serve the entire state. We have to serve our community. So we have focused where we live, which is Albuquerque. And we really focus on appealing to women and giving women a safe access point for medical cannabis and a place where they can solicit trusted information and education from skilled nurses, and that we can curtail the use of cannabis around the needs specific to women and women's health.
Okay. And okay, there's a few things there I want to kind of dig into, but the first thing is you started basically growing this as a business. Is this a for-profit business?
No, in the state of New Mexico, we're required to be nonprofits, but we're not recognized as a nonprofit with the IRS or on a federal level. We're just registered as a nonprofit business in New Mexico with the Secretary of Health and the Secretary of State.
Okay. But you're running your operation like a regular business.
We try to. It's for the most part, everything as normal with business. And, we have HR, we have accounting, we have all of the usual. So it's not nearly as sexy as it sounds to a lot of people. It's just business. That being said, we do have some pretty restrictive laws around what we can and can't do in our industry. And that caps our ability to grow the industry and our ability to provide access to more patients. Because of the federal restrictions, the states are still pretty reserved about what they will and will not allow our industry to do. And it's more than just being, it's more than us just having regulations. We're excluded from a lot of other normal business opportunities, such as credit card services or having attorney representation or having access to banking. So we can't have 401ks for our employees. There's just a lot of complications around the federal illegality of cannabis.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I know you mentioned that you focus on women and you want to provide a safe access point for them. Why is that?
Well, I'm a woman, and I'm somebody who is very selective on where I shop and who I purchase anything from. And being a difficult consumer myself, I wanted to provide access for women like me, for people who expect more, people who understand what good customer service is, and who don't want to feel like they're breaking the law in buying their medicine. So when in 2014, I decided to remodel our brand and our location in order to look even more female friendly so that women could come in and products were on display, so that we weren't describing concepts to them and running into the back to get their medicine, shoving in a brown paper bag and sending them out. I really wanted to bring this out of the shadows and into the fold where people could see their medicine, they could talk about it. If they had kids with them while they were running errands, they could bring their families in while they pick up their medicine. I wanted to create an environment that was equal in comfort to going to Walgreens and picking up your prescription medications there. And so it starts in the parking lot for me. If any individual pulls into a dispensary and feels unsafe or uncertain about the safety of the experience ahead of them, then I think that's a real negative for the industry as a whole. So we wanted to create an environment right away as soon as people pulled into the parking lot that was conducive for health. And we do that by having we have gardens in our parking lot. We have employees that on rainy days meet you at your car with an umbrella. We have customer service members that hold the door open. We don't have armed guards at the front counter. We do not have people carting patients at the door to make sure that they don't bring their families in. We want to create a culturally sensitive environment, and I think that female consumers really appreciate that.
Okay, who are the women that come in and buy the cannabis from you?
Well, they're patients. They're patients of the community who are licensed under the Department of Health to have medical cannabis cards. And they are all sorts of medical conditions, all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of ages.
Can you give us some examples of like different conditions and just paint a little bit of a picture for us of who these women are?
We serve children with seizure disorders, children with cancer diagnoses, all the way up into postmenopausal, even geriatric patients. So one of my older patients who's 86 years old, she's a new cannabis user, has never used it in her life until she was diagnosed with a seizure disorder that had to do with a focal disturbance. And at that time, her husband and her felt like medical cannabis might be a good option to resolve that seizure activity. So we have women like her. We have women with breast cancer who are looking for alternatives or looking for adjuncts to their chemotherapy. We have women who are postmenopausal and they use CBD, and CBD is a cannabinoid that is equally as popular to THC, but it's not psychoactive, and it has different medicinal purposes in the body. And so CBD can be used for post and menopausal women to help regulate their hormones because it does affect estrogen levels in the body, and it helps the body find a homeostasis while it's going through its changes. So we see women in all age ranges, younger women who have significant endometriosis and significant pain that's premenstrual. We have women who have libido issues where they're not sexually active with their partners because of chemotherapy or because of hormonal changes. So really, if you can think of it, we see it. Any concern that affects the body can be treated with cannabis, and a disease can be treated with cannabis.
Okay, and but your doctor has to give you a prescription for it? Is that how it works?
That's correct. So the way it works is that you go to your primary care would be our first choice or your specialist, and that's somebody who hopefully you have an established relationship with. When you do go see that provider, you can have an honest conversation with them about your desire or your interest in trying medical cannabis as an alternative. At that time, they fill out documentation that you can acquire off of the Department of Health website. And that documentation gets sent into the Department of Health. And in about 2 weeks, you receive a card in the mail if you meet the criteria and your doctor has proven that this is a possibility for you and a good option for you as a patient.
But is the responsibility on the patient to suggest that they are interested in it? Like, are there doctors that are actually suggesting that it's a good option?
I would have to go to every doctor in New Mexico to answer that question. I really don't know the conversations that are happening in the doctor offices. I think that there are probably some physicians, and I would imagine oncologists more than others, who initiate the conversation when they have patients who are extremely nauseated or having complications that are interfering with their ability to keep the patient on the regimen. So I think that there are some specialties that are more likely, like oncologists, to recommend it, and other specialties where, I still think that the priority or that the responsibility still lies on the patient to initiate the conversation in most cases.
Yeah. And so how are medical providers, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but maybe you do. How are medical providers being informed or trained about this option for their patients? I mean, is it part of a curriculum at all in medical school, or some sort of extra education that they can take in order to learn about it?
No, there's no cannabis education that's being provided in medical schools. I don't know if now, in the last year, they've started to create small sections where physicians can be aware that this is what they're going to see in the field these days. But I know when I was going through my nursing degree and that was not part of the conversation just about, I guess that was probably only 6 or 7 years ago now. And it wasn't on the radar then.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So it really takes patients advocating for themselves, and then also, some of the providers might be aware of it and offering it. But
there are some continuing ed classes that are offered. I partnered with GAMA, which is Greater Albuquerque Medical Association, last year to put on a continuing ed course for physicians through GAMA in cannabis. Tomorrow I go to Taos to teach a program to rural physicians and dentists around the state.
Oh, great.
Who are taking my course as a CME. So there are CMEs in existence that are cannabis focused now.
And Rachael, when like if there's a patient that's taking, doing medical cannabis and they go back to work and they have a drug testing requirement at work, how does that work? Because
it's completely up to the employer, and that will probably always be the case. It's not up to the industry. It's not up to the patient. It's really up to the employer as to what they're comfortable allowing. So if you work for an employer that has a THC inclusion in their drug policy, then you're not going to be able to use cannabis, even if you're a medical cannabis card holder, most likely. Mm-hmm. There are a few exceptions in the state that I've heard of where cannabis patients have spoken to HR and have been able to make some changes there. But for the most part, that's established through the employer and usually is not able to be changed, at least at this point. There are a couple very large organizations that we're partnering with to help them redevelop those drug guidelines so that they can be more accommodating and more patient-friendly workplaces. But it really hasn't rolled out yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought so yet, but that's interesting. Well, I want to ask you too, you recently, your company, the Verdes Foundation, recently received an award from a project that I actually lead, which is separate from this show, the Family Friendly New Mexico project, where we encourage businesses to adopt and implement family-friendly policies for their employees. And I know you got the top-level award. Can you talk about what kinds of family-friendly policies you have for your employees?
Sure. So the Verdes Foundation decided just a few years ago, because we went from 4 employees to 40 employees in a 1 year's time. So we decided at that time that we were going to prioritize what our business can do for the community instead of what the community can do for our business. And making that decision, we had to make some pretty significant sacrifices for a small business. And one of those sacrifices was to immediately enact maternity and paternity leave. And that was really important to us because we recruit college graduates, we recruit female leadership. And so that means that we need to create a lifestyle that's conducive for people for the long haul and makes them feel like they're happy to be a part of this process. So the maternity and the paternity leave were one of the more difficult benefits to roll out considering our size. And in fact, we have our in-house accountant is out on maternity leave right now, and we feel it. 43 employees and you're short your accountant, you feel it. And so it's been nice to really understand the significance of the sacrifices that we've made and put onto paper. And so we're living that right now. But the other benefit programs that we're really proud of are that we do provide educational incentives to our staff. We send them for continuing ed, and we have 3 actually employees right now that are away at different conferences. We'll send our staff to national and international conferences. We provide living wages, so we start our employees at $15 an hour, never below that. And we have environments that are friendly to the employee, meaning that they get to create an environment that they want to work in. They get to move around from space to space. And we have group think spaces and quiet spaces with noise deprivation, earphones, so that they can just sit and listen to either silence or classical music. We try to create an environment in which is conducive to employee health. And so every decision that we make along the way, we have the employee and their well-being in mind. And I really feel that that translates into our product and our service that we provide our customers as well. It's that happy customer or happy employee, happy customer. It does translate for us.
And have you noticed that you hang on to your employees longer because they're more loyal and they're happier with you? So they don't move on?
Absolutely. And it was, all these benefits were kind of, they were afterthoughts for us. We just created the environment that we ourselves would want to live and work in. Mm. And what we have found is, yes, people stay. We don't have a lot of turnover. And the unfortunate part of that means that we don't get to grow and expand and create a lot of new jobs because we retain our employees. And so we get a lot of interest for with job applications. We get it's down a little right now, but last month we were getting anywhere from 30 to 45 applications every single week. Mm. Right now, I think we're down to about 22 on average for our weeks in June. And it's hard because we so badly want to just bring everybody in and create this world where we can all work together, but we don't have a lot of turnover.
Oh, wow. Okay. If you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Rachael Speegle of the Verdes Foundation, and we're talking about medical cannabis and the impact on women and women's health and wellness. And Rachael, I want to switch gears a little bit and move into our segment called Superpowers for Success and talk a little bit more about you, the leader, and what's behind the sort of story behind how you do what you do. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Being a well woman includes being financially healthy. Our sponsors, Lorraine L. and Kate Stelter of Better Money Decisions, are on a mission to eliminate complexity and confusion from your financial life. They replace Wall Street jargon with straightforward talk you can understand, and they create investment and retirement plans customized for your needs and your future. Download a free copy of their latest book, Don't Let Your Money Kick the Bucket Before You Do, and learn how to avoid the biggest mistakes women make when planning for retirement. Go to bettermoneydecisions.com/wellwoman and download your free book today. And the first question I want to ask you is, what does success in life mean for you?
For me, I measure my success based on my contributions. I think that the legacy that I want to leave behind is measured in how much better I get to leave this world based on the condition it was when I came into it. So every decision that I make in the day tries to fall in line with my commitment to service and to serving my community, to serving my employees, to serving my customers, and to participating in this world even when it's hard. I live by doing the right thing. And that's really been a driving force for me in my leadership.
And do you think that your ability to be so focused and disciplined about staying on track with that? Because I know it's hard, it's hard to really live your values every minute of the day. But do you think your ability to stay focused on that is part of why you've been successful as a business owner?
I think that my ability to hire people in line with that belief and in line with that ethic has really contributed to our success. Mm. So I find people who share that culture with me, and I find teammates who embody that quality as well. And that means that we're able to consistently move in the right direction and that we hold each other up on difficult days. And I'm having a really difficult day today. It's been hard. It's just been hard. I've had my head up all week. I've been feeling great all week. And we get handed a lot of blows in this industry, and there's a lot of challenges. and I'm having a hard day today. And I have an entire staff and team around me who are able to continue to push forward and embody that so that I get to have a hard day and they get to have a hard day too. And I think that a big piece of that success is actually choosing people who embody that culture and grabbing them and putting them on the bus.
But that takes really great leadership, which you have alluded to several times in our conversation. And also, I know you actually do focus on and prioritize leadership, sort of helping other women in business. And you have a whole group a networking group that does that. So I want to ask you, when did you know you were really good at what you do?
I think I'm still learning it. I think that there are, so when I came on to Verdes, I was still working at Presbyterian Hospital at that time. I was working 3 days, and then I would have my 4 days off because I worked 12 or 13-hour shifts on those 3 days. And when I came to Verdes during my 4 days, I started to overhear conversations at the front counter that needed my oversight. And I, before that, didn't see a place or a purpose for nursing in cannabis. It was a subculture, I thought. I thought I didn't understand it. I thought I didn't know the vocabulary. And I felt like I didn't belong on that side of the counter and that I had nothing to offer people. So when I took the risk of stepping behind the counter and hearing the conversations and interacting with the customers, that was the first moment that I realized that I had so much more to offer outside of the walls of the hospital, and that I could have conversations with my community and with other women that didn't have to take place in an emergency room. And then from there, I started to provide more and more education, and I realized that I was good at listening, and that most of what came out of my mouth had to do with how well I was empathizing with the other person and how well I was listening to them. And then from there, I started to implement practices that were based around that quality. And those practices rolled out, and they were effective because they were all based on my real understanding of the customer and what the customer was looking to experience and what our place was in the community. And so I learned that I was good at this incrementally with every step. And in fact, it was just 2 days ago, I think it was like on Tuesday of this week, that I thought, gosh, I'm really good at coming up with ideas. When someone comes to me with a problem or they want to solve an issue that we're having, let's say in the dispensary with, let's say, cartridges. We're having leaky cartridges, e-cig cartridges. I come up with ideas fast. And that was just something, and solutions fast. That was something I just learned about myself 2-3 days ago because I've been noticing it. It's been happening. And I just didn't process that was one of my strengths yet. So I think that the beauty about owning a business and running a business is that it's an organism, it's alive, it's a living, breathing entity, and it requires so much of us that we get to give our best self, and in turn it reflects that. It reflects our worst moments and it reflects our best moments. And so every day I really learn a lot more about myself and my strengths, and I identify my weaknesses too.
Well, that's nice and refreshing coming from someone who is, leading an organization, and that's great. I want to ask you too, what superpower did you discover you had only to realize it was there all the time? That may be related to the answer you just gave to the other question.
I feel like women and I think that this is more of a familial trait than a social trait. But I think I come from an Italian family where I just saw my grandfather, who's 90 years old, about a week ago. We met him for a trip. And I come from this Italian New Jersey family where the men in the family get asked what they do and the women get asked how many children they have. Mm-hmm. And that's still the topic around the dinner table. And I didn't understand, and I didn't give myself credit that I know so much about business because I know so much about people. Women know a lot about people. They know a lot about social structure. And because of that, we know a lot about business because there's so much interaction that takes place inside and outside of a business. And that is really what I think makes or breaks the organization. Mm. And I've really started to trust that a lot more. And I never, ever thought that I'd be a businesswoman. I always thought that I knew how to take care of people, but I never thought that I knew how to take care of an organization. And I didn't ever make that translation. So I continued to pass off the larger roles and the financial tasks and the global oversight to my husband. And I realized not that long ago that I have the same qualifications and the same abilities, and mostly because he was so encouraging in letting me know and reflecting my strengths, that I started to really see it. And I understand now that always existed in me, and that ability has always been there, and it's in a lot of women. Mm. And we sometimes become so wrapped up in our ability to task manage and our ability to do this one thing so great that we forget that we're great at so much more than that one thing. We're great at global oversight, and we're great at bringing multiple facets together and understanding operations and systems and efficiencies. And that the culture of the community, we can bring what we love about that. We can bring what we like about that into our organization as well and bring it to our people.
Beautiful. Well, I want to ask you, what advice would you give your younger self? I don't know how old you are, but say 10, 15 years ago.
Sure. So I'm 35 years old. I was excited to turn 30 when I was in my 20s. I just thought that was going to be the moment that I gained my confidence. And it was, because I always believed that was going to be the moment when I found my voice. And I'd like to give myself permission to find my voice earlier. I'd like to let younger me know from my 20s that I was valuable and I had a lot to contribute. And I could have started faking it a little sooner so that I grew into it a little sooner.
That's good advice. And Rachel, you said you've had a really hard day, and another sign of a good leader is someone who can have a really hard day and still get on and do a radio interview, and be able to get through it enough to actually do the other commitments that you have. And so, what do you do when you get knocked down? What's that resilience, and how do you get through that?
Sure. So sometimes it's by just faking it. Sometimes it's by continuing on, putting the laptop on my lap and sitting down and getting to it, and being just fully immersed instead of running away or retracting. Other times, like today, I allow myself to show emotion. So I just needed to go sit in the car and go for a drive. So right before I spoke to you, I drove over to Sandia Casino and drove up Tramway to the La Luz, turn off and back. And I allow myself to show emotion. I allow myself to cry. I allow myself to get it out. If I need to scream, I scream. I encourage my staff and myself to go for a walk when it's not 100 degrees outside. So that would have been, I would have just gone for a walk up and down. The other way that we really cope around here with some of our more difficult days, and when we have loss, especially of patients that we're close to, we have dogs in the workplace. And so today we have Rusty, and he's my community relations, her dog. And he was a rescue dog that was adopted through, we started a 501c3 called MOPS, which is Medically Orphaned Pets. And so we take in pets of people who have passed or become too ill to care for their companions themselves. And we take those animals into our rescue group and place them in the community and provide them their medical care for the rest of that animal's life. Because a lot of times they're older dogs, and that can be an expense that someone's not willing to take on.
Wow.
So we take on that expense for the rest of that animal's life. And because of that, we have animals around our offices, and so I got to pet Rusty for a good 5 minutes today and snuggle with him on the floor. And I really see that those types of interactions benefit us. And sometimes for me, just doing something for somebody else changes the dialogue in my head, and stepping outside of my own world and making a kind gesture outwardly helps me change my perspective.
And Rachel, just a couple more questions before we wrap up. Do you identify as a feminist?
Oh, I love that question. So I have never in my life identified as a feminist because I was always so afraid of what that meant, too. I thought, who are these feminists? Who are these women? And what are they so upset about? I was a mountain climber. I was a high altitude mountaineer in France. I got into med school in 2008, and I never felt held back by my gender. I thought that I could do anything and that there was absolutely no glass ceiling and that this was possibly a myth until I entered the cannabis industry. And I realized that women are not given the same opportunities for startups. Women are not capitalized at the same rate. Women don't encourage each other to rise. We discourage each other out of fear of competition. And what we don't understand as women is that you can be at the top and I can also be at the top. We don't need a token female that we have to wait to fall before I can replace you, Giovanna, at the top of the organization. You can be successful and I can be successful, and that those two successes do not detract from each other. And we do not understand that as a gender. And I so badly want to encourage other women to reach out. If you're jealous of something that another woman is doing, then go right across the room and tell them, I want to do what you do. Can you tell me how you got there?
I love that.
So hell yeah, I'm a feminist. I am a feminist, and I am so, so proud to be a feminist. And I'm proud to be an equalist. I think that sometimes in the conversations that women have about gender equality, we forget about other forms of equality. And I think that it is important that as women, we remember that this is not just a gender inequality issue, but that it's also a race issue. And I make 80 cents on the dollar as a white woman, 80 cents on the dollar average that every white male makes. And a Hispanic woman makes 40 cents on the dollar of what every white male makes. And I think that that's something we have to embody, and we have to come together and represent this inequality that still exists.
That's great. And I know you do work on women's leadership, and we'll link to your group in the notes on the website. But just very briefly, what is the leadership group that you have?
Sure. So actually, it does not exist in New Mexico anymore. I was the founding member for Women Grow Albuquerque, and Women Grow ABQ, as we called it, started September of 2014, and it ran until December of 2016. And that's when I exited as the chapter chair for Women Grow. And they changed their contracts on a national level. And some of the women that were supposed to take it over felt that it had changed too much to represent the needs and the ideology of our local community. And the expenses, to be honest, became too expensive for women of any socioeconomic class to be able to afford to go. And we didn't feel that it was appropriate to have something that would be that restrictive and excluding of everyone. So it does not exist in New Mexico, and there is always an opportunity, but I recommend that people go to womengrow.com because you can hear the lectures and you can be inspired. And that's what it's about. It's about coming together and supporting each other. And I think that that can happen on a deep level without just a national organization leading it. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say about that is that Women Grow started based off of Women 2.0. And Women 2.0 is an organization in Silicon Valley that started because of the disparity for women startups and female funding in Silicon Valley. And it still exists. It wasn't intended to still exist. It was intended to help bring equality and then to dissolve. And it still exists because there isn't equality yet. Mm-hmm. Women Grow Albuquerque was able to dissolve because the equality does exist. We're seeing 63% of female leadership, 63% of all leadership within the cannabis industry is female-based within the testing labs and the processors and manufacturers. And that's really significant. And in New Mexico alone, there's a 40% female leadership in the cannabis industry. And so it's nice that we get to dissolve and move on to other projects because we resolved something.
Yeah. Okay. And very last question here, Rachel. What are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand?
I am reading a book that's called The Energy Bus. It's a thin book, and it's just a light read, but it's great. And I'm reading it right now because I'm about to ask my staff to read it, and we create book clubs at work. So different departmental book clubs, and we incentivize our employees to join those book clubs or read the books that we're reading so that they can be part of the leadership conversations. And then we take them out for a pizza party and some time to discuss the books upon completion. So that's what I'm reading right now. I just finished a book called Communication Miracles for Couples. And I was reading it because my husband and I decided to read it, but I really use it a lot with my staff. It's great communication tools for conflict resolution and such.
Oh, great. Okay. So we'll link to those books in the notes on the website, and you can, we'll give all the information at the end here. But Rachel, this has been such a great conversation. I want to thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you so much, Giovanna. It's an honor to talk with you guys today. I appreciate it.
That's it for our show today. Remember, if you need support to live your Well Woman life, head over to wellwomanlife.com/Facebook to join us. Our monthly live event, Well Woman Drinks, brings women together to share our successes and challenges as women, leaders, moms, aunts, sisters, and all the other roles we carry. If you'd like to attend a Well Woman Drinks near you, or if there isn't one in your city yet and you'd like to start one, email info@wellwomanlife.com. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and subscribe in iTunes and leave a review. This helps raise visibility, which is super helpful when it comes to producing the show every week. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening today, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @WellWomanLife. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.